Look at the ground beneath your feet. Really look at it. You think it is solid. You think it is the permanent foundation of our world. But to a geologist, the ground is something else entirely. It is a conveyor belt. It is a slow motion meat grinder. Every inch of land you are standing on right now is slowly, inevitably moving. It is sliding under continental plates, diving into the mantle, and melting into magma. The Earth is constantly eating itself. It swallows its own surface, incinerates it, melts it down, and spits it back out as new volcanoes. This is the ultimate recycling machine, and it is terrifyingly efficient. Because of this machine, we have almost no ocean floor on this entire planet that is older than 200 million years. Think about the scale of that number. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. But the ocean floor, which makes up 70% of the planet's surface, is brand new. It is a blank slate. It is like walking into a library where the librarian burns every book after it becomes a few weeks old. So, when we say we have found no evidence of previous civilizations, what we are really saying is, we have only read the books that haven't been burned yet. We cling to the comforting illusion that we are the first masters of this world because we don't see any ruins. We look at the pyramids, the Great Wall, our skyscrapers, and we imagine them standing forever. But ruins are fragile. Stone crumbles under acid rain. Steel rusts and buckles. Concrete turns to dust. Plastic degrades into microscopic sludge. If a civilization exactly as advanced as ours existed during the Jurassic period, 150 million years ago, their cities wouldn't just be buried. They would have been subducted into the mantle, melted into lava, and recycled into the atoms of the rock you are standing on today. The evidence wouldn't be a statue, it wouldn't be a microchip, it wouldn't be a bone, it would be a ghost, a chemical anomaly, a glitch in the matrix of the rock record. And here's the disturbing reality that most people ignore. We have found the glitches. We usually call them natural disasters. But when you look at the data with the eyes of a forensic investigator, some of these disasters look suspiciously like industrial accidents. To understand this, we have to look at the Paleocene, Eocene thermal maximum, or the PETM. 56 million years ago, the Earth was quiet. The dinosaurs had been gone for 10 million years. The planet was recovering. And then, in a geological instant, the world caught fire. The global temperature spiked by 8 degrees Celsius. The oceans turned acidic. The permafrost melted. Ecosystems collapsed worldwide. Science tells us this was caused by a massive injection of carbon into the atmosphere. The mainstream theories blame massive volcanic eruptions hitting coal deposits or the sudden release of methane hydrates from the seafloor. And maybe that is true. But when you analyze the isotope signature of that carbon, specifically the ratio of carbon, 12 to carbon 13, it looks familiar. It looks hauntingly familiar. The curve of carbon release during the PETM matches with terrifying precision the curve of the Anthropocene. It matches us. It looks exactly like the signature of a global civilization burning fossil fuels at an exponential rate, triggering a runaway greenhouse effect and then collapsing. The rate of carbon release was too fast for normal volcanic activity, but perfect for an industrial revolution gone wrong. Are we looking at a natural volcano? Or are we looking at the exhaust fumes of a society that burned itself out 56 million years ago? Did they face their own climate apocalypse? Did they scream into the void as their oceans turned to acid, just as we are beginning to do? The rock record doesn't answer. It just shows the scar. But the PETM is not the only anomaly. Look further back to the Carboniferous period, 300 million years ago. This was the age of global forests. But something strange happened during this time. The trees didn't decay. When they died, they didn't rot away and return their carbon to the cycle. They just piled up, layer upon layer of dead wood, kilometers thick, eventually turning into the massive coal beds that power our civilization today. The scientific explanation is that microbes and fungi hadn't evolved the ability to digest lignin, the hard fiber in wood. So the trees just sat there. But there is another possibility, one that the Silurian hypothesis forces us to consider. What if that massive accumulation of carbon wasn't natural? What if it was a form of planetary management or a byproduct of a biosphere that had been artificially altered? We see a planet that was essentially stockpiling fuel. Was it being saved, or was the chemistry of the planet being manipulated by something that understood the value of stored energy? The deeper we look, the more we realize that the natural history of Earth looks suspiciously like a cycle of rise and fall. We see sudden explosions of life, like the Cambrian explosion, where complex eyes, armor, and nervous systems appear out of nowhere, as if they were dumped onto the planet from a laboratory. We see sudden, unexplained mass extinctions where 90% of life vanishes overnight, leaving the planet empty for the next tenant. We are like detectives walking into a crime scene that has been bleached, scrubbed, and burned, but the smell of the smoke is still there. And the most disturbing clue isn't in the rocks, it is in the emptiness. There is a concept in astronomy called the Great Silence, the lack of alien signals from the stars. But there is a great silence right here on Earth. Geologists call it the Great Unconformity. Go to the Grand Canyon. You can touch a layer of rock that is 500 million years old. Directly underneath it, touching it, is rock that is 1.2 billion years old. And do the math. 700 million years are missing. In some places on Earth, over 1 billion years of history are missing. Not buried, not hidden. Gone. Erased. Geologists say it was erosion. They say massive glaciers scraped the surface of the Earth clean, grinding 1 billion years of rock into dust and washing it into the sea, where it was subducted and melted. But 1 billion years? 1 billion years is enough time for a civilization to rise from stone tools to spaceflight 10,000 times over. It is enough time to colonize the galaxy. It is enough time to evolve, ascend, and die. And yet, the record of that entire eon has been scraped off the face of the planet down to the bedrock. That is not just erosion. That is a hard reset. What happened in that missing 1 billion years? Did a civilization rise, span the stars, and then decide to dismantle their home? Or did they fight a war so devastating that they stripped the crust of the planet itself? We are so proud of our Anthropocene, the age of humans. We are leaving our mark a layer of plastic, concrete, and nuclear isotopes. We think this layer will last forever. We think we are writing a permanent testament to our greatness. But the Earth is patient. The conveyor belt is moving. The subduction zones are hungry. In a few million years, our layer, the sum total of all our wars, our love, our internet, our cities, will be nothing but a thin, dark line in a cliff face. A strange chemical smudge that future geologists might look at and say, must have been a volcanic eruption. This is the horror of deep time. It doesn't just hide the past, it threatens our future. It tells us that we are not the protagonists of this story. We are just the current chapter, and the page is about to turn. However, the Earth cannot erase everything. There are things that survive the fire. There are materials that defy the meat grinder. If we want to find the truth, we have to stop looking for cities and start looking for the indestructibles. We need to look for the things that are too small to be crushed, too hard to be melted, and too unnatural to be ignored. Consider the synthetic diamond. Industrial diamonds are created under pressures and temperatures that replicate the deep mantle, but they have a lattice structure that is slightly different from natural diamonds. If a civilization used diamond-based nanotechnology or massive diamond drill bits, those microscopic shards would survive in the sediment for billions of years. They would wash into the rivers, settle in the deltas, and be compressed into sandstone. They are out there, waiting for a microscope powerful enough to see them. Consider the forever chemicals. We have created compounds like PFAS chains of carbon and fluorine that are so strong, nature has no way to break them down. They don't decay, they accumulate. If we looked at the ice cores of Antarctica or the deep clays of the ocean floor, would we find layers of complex polymers from 100 million years ago? And then there is the ultimate marker, the nuclear fingerprint. Plutonium-244, curium, americium. These are elements that do not exist in nature on Earth. They are born only in the heart of a supernova or in the heart of a nuclear reactor. They have half-lived lives that allow them to linger for millions of years. If a civilization blew itself up with nuclear weapons, or if they simply had a vast network of fission reactors powering their cities, the waste from those reactors would be the longest, lasting legacy they could leave. We have found traces of xenon, 129 in the atmosphere of Mars, a signature that some physicists argue looks like a massive nuclear event. But we have also found anomalies here. We found them in the uranium mines of Gabon, where the Oklo natural reactor supposedly operated. We found them in the widespread layer of iridium that covers the planet at the dinosaur extinction line. We are told the iridium came from an asteroid. And maybe it did. But asteroids and hydrogen bombs share a lot of the same physics. They both deliver kinetic energy, heat, and rare isotopes in a blinding flash of destruction. What if the asteroid was actually a war? The line between a natural catastrophe and a technological apocalypse is thinner than we think. And as our own technology advances, we are starting to realize that the tools we use to destroy ourselves are the same tools that might have destroyed those who came before us. But to find these traces, we have to know where to look. We cannot look in the active zones of the Earth, where the crust is constantly recycling. We have to look in the dead zones, the quiet places, the places where the Earth has stopped moving. There are ancient cratons shields of rock in Canada, Australia, and Africa that have remained stable for billions of years. These are the vaults of the planet. If there is a message left for us, it is carved into these shields. And there is one other place, a place that is not of Earth but is intimately tied to it, a place that has no wind, no rain, no tectonic plates to erase the past. The Moon. If a civilization existed on Earth millions of years ago, and if they were capable of spaceflight, they would have gone to the Moon. And unlike Earth, the Moon keeps its secrets. A Futhan Forant left on the Moon 100 million years ago would still be there today, perfectly preserved in the gray dust. A crashed satellite, a discarded rover, a mining outpost, they would sit there, frozen in the vacuum, waiting. When we look at the Moon, we see a desolate wasteland, but maybe we are just too far away to see the junkyard. The search for the Silurian Hypothesis is not just a search for the past, it is a search for a mirror. We are looking for ourselves in the deep strata of geological time. We are terrified of finding nothing because that means we are alone. But we are even more terrified of finding something. Because if we find a screw, a gear, or a microchip embedded in a lump of coal from the Carboniferous period, it proves that intelligence is not a shield against extinction. It proves that you can build the greatest civilization the world has ever seen and still end up as nothing more than a thin layer of strange dust in a canyon wall. This is the paradox of our existence. We build for eternity on a planet that specializes in impermanence. But there is one legacy that might outlast even the rocks, one storage medium that is more durable than diamond, more complex than any computer, and capable of self-replication: life itself. What if the message isn't written in the rocks, but in us? Evolution is a messy, chaotic process, but sometimes it makes leaps that make no sense. The transition from single-celled life to multi-cellular life, the development of language, the sudden expansion of the human brain. Geneticists speak of junk DNA, vast sequences of our genetic code that seem to do nothing. They don't code for proteins. They don't determine eye color. They just sit there, repeating over and over again. Is it garbage? Or is it a hard drive? If you wanted to leave a record of your civilization that would last for 1 billion years, you wouldn't carve it in stone. Stone erodes. You wouldn't write it on paper. Paper burns. You wouldn't store it on a hard drive. Magnets decay. You would write it into the genome of a survivor. You would encode your history, your warnings, honor your very identity into the DNA of a bacteria, or a mammal, or a virus. You would turn the biosphere itself into a library. Perhaps we are the walking libraries of a forgotten age. Perhaps the missing link in human evolution wasn't a biological accident, but a software update. We are searching the stars for signals, listening for radio waves from distant galaxies, while the most important message ever sent might be scrolling through our own bloodstreams right now. The Silurian Hypothesis asks us to consider that we are living in a haunted house. Every time we burn coal, we might be burning the remains of the last tenants. Every time we find a strange isotope, we might be touching the weapon that killed them. And every time we look in the mirror, we might be looking at their backup plan. The silence of the past is deafening. But it is not empty. It is full of ghosts waiting for us to develop the eyes to see them. And as our science advances, as we peel back the layers of the earth and decode the secrets of the genome, we are getting closer to the truth. The truth is not that they are gone. The truth is that they are all around us, disguised as dirt, disguised as oil, disguised as us. We are just the latest layer of paint on a canvas that has been painted over 1,000 times. And unless we learn to read the layers beneath us, we are destined to be painted over just the same. The conveyor belt moves on, the meat grinder turns, and the earth prepares to recycle us, just as it recycled the gods who walked here before us. But there are some things the earth cannot digest. The geological meat grinder of plate tectonics is efficient, but it is not infinite. It can crush stone, it can melt iron, it can recycle carbon. But there are materials synthetic, unnatural materials that act like a poison in the planetary gut. They do not disappear. They just change form. If you want to find a civilization that died 60 million years ago, you don't look for their bones, you look for their trash. Scientists have a name for this new geological layer we are creating right now. They call it the technosphere. It is estimated to weigh 30 trillion tons. It is the sum total of every skyscraper, highway, smart hand H, phone, glass bottle, and plastic bag we have ever produced. To the Earth, this is not infrastructure. It is a layer of sediment, a layer of foreign contaminants. And the king of these contaminants is plastic. We think of plastic as cheap and disposable, but geologically it is a monster. It is a long chain polymer that nature never intended to exist. When a plastic bottle degrades, it doesn't vanish. It breaks down into smaller and smaller fragments. These particles sink into the ocean floor, mix with the mud, and are compressed by the weight of the water. Give it 10 million years. The heat and pressure will fuse that plastic mud mixture into something new. Geologists have already given it a name, plastiglomerate. Future civilizations will dig up rocks that look like ordinary sandstone, but when they put them under a spectrometer, they will see the ghost of a polymer chain. They will see a distinct, unnatural layer of synthetic carbon wrapping around the entire planet like a suffocating blanket. So, here is the question that keeps forensic geologists awake at night. Have we found this layer before? We have found strange layers of carbon, rich black shale in the geological record. We usually assume they are just ancient algae blooms or mass die, offs of plants. But what if some of those black shales are actually the crushed, pressurized remains of an ancient ocean filled with plastic? What if the oil we drill today is not just dead dinosaurs, but the melted down landfills of a forgotten empire? We are burning the remains of the past to power our present. If that past was industrial, then we are effectively running our cars on the recycled ruins of our ancestors. But plastic is soft. If you want proof of high technology, you look for something harder. You look for the vampire materials. To build a smart hand phone or a jet engine or a nuclear warhead, you need rare earth elements, neodymium, yttrium, lanthanum, gold. These elements are dispersed thinly across the Earth's crust. Nature spreads them out, but a civilization concentrates them. We dig massive holes in the ground, extract these rare elements, and pile them up in our cities. When our civilization collapses, those piles don't just disappear. They melt down into the sediment. A future geologist digging through the ruins of New York City, which will be a layer of weird rock about 2 meters thick, will find a spike in the chemical record. A sudden, impossible concentration of gold, rare earth metals, and refined silicon all in one spot. Nature doesn't do that. Only intelligence does that. And remarkably, we have found these spikes. In rock layers dating back to the extinction of the dinosaurs and even further back to the Permian extinction, we find microscopic anomalies, tiny, perfect spheres of metal. These are not the jagged, random shapes of natural ore. These are perfect microspheres of titanium, vanadium, and iron. Mainstream science calls them cosmic spherules, assuming they are just dust from meteorites burning up in the atmosphere. And many of them are. But some of them have chemical compositions that match any known meteorite. They contain alloys that require blast furnaces to create. They are found in layers of the Earth that correspond to mass extinctions. Are these the remains of an ancient asteroid? Or are they the industrial dust of a global war? When a nuclear weapon detonates, it vaporizes the tower, the sand, and the metal casing, turning them into a cloud of molten glass droplets that rain down over the landscape. These droplets are time capsules. They preserve the exact chemical signature of the explosion. We have found similar glass spheres, known as tektites, scattered across vast areas of the planet, dated to times when no humans existed. We say they are from asteroid impacts, but the distribution patterns sometimes look less like a random rock hitting the planet and more like a targeted grid. And then, there is the ultimate stain, the one that glows in the dark. We have spoken of the nuclear fingerprint, but we need to understand the scale of it. If you detonated every nuclear weapon on Earth today, the radiation would kill us, but the radiation itself would fade relatively quickly. Strontium, 90, and cesium, 137 have half, lives of about 30 years. In a millennium, they are quiet. But there are other isotopes: plutonium, 244, curium, 247, iodine, 129. These are the long-lived radionuclides. Their half, lives are measured in millions of years. They are the eternal witnesses. If a civilization had a nuclear industry comparable to ours, or if they fought a nuclear war, they would blanket the planet in plutonium, 244. This isotope does not exist naturally on Earth. It is an artificial marker. Remarkably, we have detected trace amounts of plutonium-244 in deep sea sediments. The scientific consensus is that this is stardust, debris from a supernova that exploded near our solar system millions of years ago, sprinkling the Earth with radioactive dust. It is a plausible theory. It fits the data. But it is also exactly what a nuclear winter would look like after 10 million years of erosion. The problem with the Silurian hypothesis is not a lack of evidence. It is the ambiguity of evidence. Nature is violent. Volcanoes explode like bombs. Asteroids strike like missiles. Climate change happens naturally. A sufficiently advanced civilization mimics nature. Their industry looks like volcanoes. Their wars look like asteroid strikes. Their collapse looks like climate change. We are looking for a needle in a haystack, but the needle looks exactly like hay. However, there is one place where the natural explanation fails, one place where the geometry is too perfect to be an accident. We must look at the cybernetic geometry of the past. Nature loves fractals. It loves rough edges, coastlines, branching trees. Nature rarely builds in straight lines. It never builds perfect right angles. It never builds a grid. If we scan the deep subsurface of the Earth using ground-penetrating radar and seismic tomography, we sometimes see ghost structures. Beneath the ice of Antarctica, beneath the sands of the Sahara, and buried under the sediments of the Amazon, radar has picked up hints of massive orthogonal structures, right angles, parallel lines. In the Amazon, we recently discovered that what we thought was virgin rainforest was actually a massive planet-scale garden engineered by a lost civilization that built geometric earthworks covering thousands of square miles. And that was only human history, just a few thousand years ago. What lies deeper? There are seismic anomalies in the Earth's mantle, huge, dense blobs of matter located deep under Africa and the Pacific Ocean. Geologists call them large, low, shear velocity provinces. They are the size of continents. We think they are just piles of hot rock. But there is a fringe theory, a dark whisper in the geological community, that these might be the graveyards of the ancient world. When a continental plate subducts, it carries the surface down with it. If a massive continent-spanning civilization existed billions of years ago, their cities, their mega structures, their entire crust would have been dragged down into the mantle. Maybe those massive blobs deep inside the earth are not just rocks. Maybe they are the melted, compressed ruins of the first world, the ultimate landfill. We are literally walking on top of them. But let's step back from the edge of madness and look at something more tangible, something you can hold in your hand. Coal. We burn it. We assume it is just dead trees. But coal often contains inclusions, strange objects trapped inside the black rock. For centuries, miners have reported finding impossible objects inside coal seams: iron cups, gold chains, perfect metal cubes. Most of these are hoaxes or misidentifications, but not all of them. There is the mystery of the Wolfsegg iron, a strange, faceted cube of iron found inside a block of coal in Austria dating back 20 million years. There is the Dorchester pot, a metal vessel blasted out of solid rock in Massachusetts. Science has a label for these anomalies. They call them out-of-place artifacts. We laugh at them. We say they fell down a mine shaft. Or it's a natural concretion that just looks like a pot. But what if they are the rare survivors? Think about a tornado tearing through a house. It destroys everything. But sometimes, in the rubble, you find a single teacup perfectly intact. The geological meat grinder destroys almost everything from the past. But maybe, just maybe, the Wolfsegg iron is that single teacup. A tiny, rusted fragment of a machine that hummed with power before the first ape stood upright. We dismiss these artifacts because they didn't fit our timeline. We are like a jury refusing to look at a murder weapon because we believe the suspect wasn't born yet. But the weapon is there. The fingerprints are on it. And the strangest evidence of all is a machine. It's a map, not a paper map, a biological map. We need to talk about the domestication paradox. Humans domesticated crops like wheat and corn about 10,000 years ago. We took wild grasses and engineered them into food. It changed the face of the planet. But genetic studies of certain ancient plants show something baffling. There are genetic bottlenecks, moments in deep time, millions of years ago, where it looks like certain species were selected. Plants that suddenly appeared with traits perfectly suited for farming. Monocultures that appeared out of nowhere. Did ants do this? Did termites? Or was there another farmer? We know that fungus, farming ants have existed for millions of years. They practice agriculture. They have an industrial society. But what if something larger than an ant did it? If a civilization terraformed the earth 50 million years ago to grow their own version of corn, that crop would eventually go wild again after they vanished. But the genetic scar would remain. The DNA would still look engineered. We look at the Amazon rainforest and assume it is wild. Recent studies show it is almost entirely an anthropogenic forest, a garden planted by humans. If humans could plant the Amazon in a few thousand years, what could a reptilian or insectoid industrial civilization plant in 1,000,000 years? Maybe the entire biosphere we see today is not natural. Maybe we are living in the overgrown feral garden of a dead gardener. We are scavengers. We live in the ruins of a house we didn't build, eating the fruit from trees we didn't plant, burning the fuel stored by hands we will never shake. And just like any squatter in an abandoned house, we should be asking one question. Why did the owners leave? Did they flee? Did they ascend to the stars? Or did the house kill them? In the next segment of our investigation, we will stop looking at the ground and start looking at the sky. Because if they were as advanced as we are, they wouldn't have stayed on Earth. They would have left foothandprints on the silent, dusty plains of the Moon and Mars. And unlike Earth, the vacuum of space never forgets. We are going to hunt for the orbital ruins, and what we find there might be the warning we are too late to heed. The Earth can hide the bodies, but space keeps the score. Earth is a shredder, space is a museum. This is the fundamental truth that forensic astronomers rely on. While the Earth is busy melting its own history, the vacuum of space offers the ultimate preservation. There is no wind to erode stone. There is no water to rust metal. There is no tectonic plate to swallow ruins. If you drop a hammer on the moon, it will sit there, unchanged for 1 billion years. The dust might cover it, but the hammer remains. So if a previous industrial civilization ever achieved spaceflight, even just once, the evidence is not down here. It is up there. We are currently surrounding our planet with a cloud of debris. Dead satellites, rocket boosters, paint flecks, and tools dropped by astronauts. We call it the space junkyard. If humans vanished today, most of low, Earth orbit debris would burn up in the atmosphere within a few centuries. Gravity drags it down, but not all of it. There are special places in space called geosynchronous orbit and the Lagrange points. These are gravitational parking spots where objects can remain stable for millions of years. If the ancients launched satellites, communication buoys, or surveillance drones into these orbits, they are still there, silent, dark, cold. We have detected objects in these regions that we cannot explain. In the 1950s, before Sputnik was even launched, radio operators reported detecting a satellite in a polar orbit. They called it the Black Night. Mainstream science dismisses it as a thermal blanket lost during a spacewalk or just space debris. And they are probably right. But the concept haunts us. What if, among the thousands of pieces of junk we track on radar, one of them isn't ours? What if there is a derelict Sentinel drifting in the darkness, its battery dead for 50 million years, waiting for a signal that will never come? We wouldn't know. To us, it's just another blip on the screen. Unless we go up there and grab it. But the real gold mine of artifacts isn't in orbit. It's on the moon. The moon is the witness that saw everything. It has watched the Earth for 4.5 billion years. It saw the dinosaurs rise and fall. It saw the continents split. And if there were city lights on Earth in the Jurassic period, the moon saw them too. More importantly, if they went there, they left foot-hand footprints. We can spot the Apollo landing sites from orbit, we can see the rover tracks, we can see the descent stages, but we have only mapped a tiny fraction of the lunar surface in high resolution. What are we missing? There's a phenomenon known as transient lunar phenomena. For centuries, astronomers, including credible scientists, have reported strange flashes of light on the moon, red glows, brief sparks, mists appearing in craters. We say it is outgassing, we say it is meteor impacts, but a darker theory suggests a different possibility. What if we are seeing the final dying sparks of automated machinery, solar panels catching the light, venting systems of underground bunkers that have finally failed after eons? And then there is Mars. If the Earth is the crime scene, Mars is the exile. We dream of terraforming Mars. We assume we are the first to have this dream, but Mars has secrets that suggest we might be late to the party. The atmosphere of Mars contains an unusual amount of xenon, 129. On Earth, xenon, 129, is rare. It is produced primarily by one-thing nuclear detonation. The concentration on Mars is high, suspiciously high. A physicist named Dr. John Brandenburg published a controversial hypothesis suggesting that this signature looks like the aftermath of a massive planetary-scale nuclear event. He argues that Mars wasn't just dry and dead. He argues it was murdered. Did the ancients flee Earth during a previous catastrophe, set up colonies on Mars, and then destroy themselves in a final war? Or were they attacked? Is the red dust of Mars actually the radioactive fallout of a civilization that failed the Great Filter? We look at the face on Mars or the geometric structures in the Cydonia region, and we laugh. We call it pareidolia, our brain seeing faces in rocks. And yes, they are likely just rocks. But the isotopic signature is not a trick of the eye. The xenon is there. The radiation scar is real. This leads to the most tragic possibility of the Silurian hypothesis. We always assume that an advanced civilization would spread to the stars. We assume they would build a galactic empire. Since we don't see a galactic empire, we assume they never existed. But space is hard. Space is deadly. Maybe they tried. Maybe they launched ships. Maybe they built bases on the moon. Maybe they terraformed Mars. And maybe they failed. Imagine a colony on the moon, cut off from Earth after a nuclear war destroyed the home planet. They watch from the silent craters as the Earth burns. They watch the lights go out. They survive for a year, maybe a generation. But without supplies, without Earth, they slowly suffocate. Their base becomes a tomb. Millions of years later, we land. We plant our flag. We think we are conquerors. But just over the horizon, buried in the gray dust, might be the airlock of a lost brother. We haven't found it yet because we haven't looked. We've explored less of the moon than we have of the bottom of the ocean. But there is a specific type of artifact we should be hunting for, one that is designed to survive even the death of its creators. The time capsule. If you knew your civilization was ending, if you knew an asteroid was coming, or a plague, or a war, and you knew you couldn't stop it, what is the last thing you would do? You would try to leave a note. You wouldn't write it on paper. You wouldn't put it on a hard drive. You would etch it into quartz using lasers. You would encode it into the structure of a synthetic crystal. You would launch it into a stable orbit, or bury it on the moon, or sink it into the deepest trench of the ocean. We call these Lazarus devices, beacons of information designed to wake up when a new intelligence arrives. In 2008, the Rosetta disk was launched, a nickel disk etched with thousands of pages of human language. It is designed to last for 10,000 years. But 10,000 years is nothing. A civilization 1,000,000 years ahead of us could build a beacon that lasts for 1,000,000,000 years. Maybe the Black Knight isn't a piece of junk. Maybe it is a library. Maybe the strange radio bursts we hear from deep space, the fast radio bursts, aren't natural stars. Maybe they are the automated distress signals of civilizations that died long ago, repeating their final warning into the void. Do not make our mistake. Do not burn the sky. Do not wake the sleeper. But we are not listening. We are too busy shouting our own noise into the cosmos. There is one more place we haven't looked, a place that is technically on Earth but acts like an alien planet. A place where time stands still and where the ruins of the past might be preserved in a cryo chamber. Antarctica. We think of Antarctica as a block of ice, but millions of years ago it was a rainforest. It was a temperate paradise. And now it is covered by a shield of ice 2 miles thick. If a civilization built cities there, the ice didn't destroy them. It sealed them. It froze them in time. Ground-penetrating radar has recently detected massive continent-spanning structures beneath the ice, lakes that have been sealed off for 15 million years, mountains that no human eye has ever seen. And something else, gravitational anomalies, places where the mass beneath the ice is too dense or too hollow to be natural rock. In the next segment, we are going to descend into the cold. We are going to crack open the frozen archive. We are going to ask, what is hidden in the dark under the South Pole? And why are governments so interested in what lies beneath the ice? We have looked at the fire. We have looked at the void. Now we must look at the ice. The thaw is coming. If you wanted to hide a body, you wouldn't bury it in the desert. The scavengers would find it. You wouldn't throw it in the ocean. The currents would bring it back. You would put it in a freezer. Antarctica is the ultimate freezer. It is a continent larger than Europe, buried under a shield of ice that is, on average, over 1 mile thick. It is the most hostile, isolated, and mysterious place on Earth, and it is the only place where the geological meat grinder has stopped. Under that ice, there is no erosion, there is no farming, there is no city building. There is only silence. If a civilization built a metropolis in Antarctica 30 million years ago, it wouldn't be a ruin today. It would be a photograph, a perfect frozen snapshot of the day the ice came, and we know for a fact that they could have lived there. This is the part of history that we often forget. For most of Earth's history, Antarctica was not a white wasteland. It was green. 90 million years ago, it was a temperate rainforest. It had rivers, swamps, and massive forests of beech trees. The temperature was similar to modern-day New Zealand. We have found fossilized roots, pollen, and even the remains of dinosaurs that lived in the Antarctic gloom. It was a paradise at the bottom of the world, a perfect place for an industrial civilization to rise. But then, the world changed. The Drake Passage opened, the ocean currents shifted, and the temperature plummeted. The forests didn't just die. They were entombed. The ice sheet grew over them, sealing everything in a tomb of pressure and cold. So, what is down there? We used to think the bedrock under the ice was dead flat, but in the last few decades, satellites and aircraft equipped with ice-penetrating radar have begun to map the sub-glacial terrain. What they found was shocking. They found the Gamburtsev Mountains, a mountain range the size of the European Alps, completely buried under the ice. Peaks that rise thousands of feet, valleys that dip miles deep, all invisible from the surface. Imagine the Alps. Now, imagine pouring concrete over them until they are gone. That is Antarctica. But radar has found things that look less like mountains and more like structures. In the region known as Wilkes Land, satellites have detected a massive gravitational anomaly, a huge concentration of mass sitting deep beneath the ice crater. It is 300 miles wide. Geologists call it a mascon, a mass concentration. The standard theory is that it is the metallic core of a giant asteroid that smashed into the Earth long ago and is still sitting there, buried in the crater. But a 300-mile-wide metal object buried under the ice evokes a different kind of fear. Is it a rock? Or is it a fortress? Is it the bunker where a previous civilization tried to ride out the apocalypse? And then there are the lakes. We have discovered over 400 liquid water lakes trapped between the bedrock and the ice sheet. The most famous is Lake Vostok. This is a body of water the size of Lake Ontario, sealed off from the rest of the world for at least 15 million years. It is pitch black. It is under immense pressure. And yet, the water is liquid because of the geothermal heat from the Earth's core. If there was life on the shores of Lake Vostok before the freeze, did it survive? If they built cities on the edge of that lake, are those cities now underwater, preserved in the eternal darkness like a frozen Atlantis? We have drilled into the ice above Lake Vostok, but we are terrified to touch the water itself. We say it is because we don't want to contaminate the pristine ecosystem. But perhaps we are also afraid of what might swim up to meet the drill. The ice of Antarctica is not just a lid, it is a library. As snow falls, it traps tiny bubbles of air. Over millions of years, these layers of snow are compressed into ice, preserving a perfect record of the Earth's atmosphere. This is where we confirm the crimes of the past. When we drill ice cores, we can taste the air from 400,000 years ago. We can measure the carbon dioxide. We can detect volcanic ash. But we are looking for something more specific. We are looking for the spikes. If a civilization burned fossil fuels for 1,000 years, the evidence is trapped in those air bubbles. If they fought a nuclear war, the radioactive isotopes are locked in the ice layers like rings in a tree. We have found strange spikes in atmospheric methane and lead in ancient ice samples that don't perfectly align with natural models. We usually explain them away as solar activity or volcanic venting, but the patterns are erratic. They look like noise. Or they look like industry. There is another mystery regarding Antarctica that is much harder to explain. It involves a map. In 1929, historians discovered a map drawn by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis in the year 1513. The map shows the coast of South America and Africa with surprising accuracy. But down at the bottom, it shows a coastline that looks suspiciously like Antarctica. Not the ice-covered Antarctica we know today, but the coast of Queen Maud Land, without the ice. Critics say it is just a drawing error or a hypothetical continent that sailors imagined. But if it is a map of the sub-glacial coast, how did a 16th-century admiral know what it looked like? He claimed he copied it from older source maps, dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, and perhaps even older. Maps from the Library of Alexandria. Is it possible that human civilization retains a fragmented memory of a time when the ice wasn't there? Or did we inherit those maps from someone else? Someone who mapped the world from orbit before the Big Freeze began. The governments of the world treat Antarctica differently than any other landmass. It is the only continent dedicated to peace and science. It is a no man's land. Military activity is banned. Resource mining is banned. It is a beautiful sentiment. But to a conspiracy theorist, it looks like a quarantine. Why are there massive no-fly zones over the South Pole? Why are certain coordinates blacked out on satellite maps? Are we protecting the penguins, or are we hiding the excavation? If the Silurian hypothesis is true, Antarctica is the smoking gun. And it is the place where the timeline broke. Maybe the freezing of Antarctica wasn't natural. We know that the climate changed because the continents drifted, opening a gap that allowed cold water to circle the pole. But what if it was an engine? What if the flash freeze was a geo-engineering project gone wrong? A desperate attempt by an ancient civilization to stop global warming, which ended up freezing their world instead. We are trying to cool our own planet right now. We are talking about spraying aerosols into the stratosphere to block the sun. We are playing with the thermostat of the Earth. Maybe the ice of Antarctica is the monument to the last time someone tried to play God with the climate. But the physical ruins are only half the story. Stone and steel can be hidden by ice, but there is one thing that cannot be hidden. Because it is everywhere. It is inside the water, inside the soil, and inside the blood of every living thing on Earth. The biological code. In the next segment, we are moving from the dead to the living. We are going to look at the software of the planet. Why does the human genome contain alien DNA? Why did domestication happen so suddenly? And why do we have an innate fear of the dark, as if we spent millions of years hiding from a predator that no longer exists? We have examined the house. Now we must examine the tenants. The code is broken. And we are the glitch. There is a feeling that every human being has experienced at least once in their life. You are walking alone in a dark room or down an empty street, and suddenly, the hair on the back of your neck stands up. You stop. You listen. You look around. You see nothing. But you know you are being watched. Evolutionary biologists call this hyperactive agency detection. It is a survival mechanism. It is better to mistake the wind for a tiger than to mistake a tiger for the wind. But what if it is not a mistake? What if that primal instinct is reacting to something real? We have spent the last century shouting into the void. We send radio signals to nearby stars. We launch gold-plated records on the Voyager probes. We scan the sky with massive radio telescopes, begging the universe to talk to us. And the universe answers with silence. This is the Fermi paradox. If the universe is old and life is common, where is everybody? There are many solutions to this paradox. Maybe they are dead. Maybe they are too far away. But there is a darker solution, one that fits perfectly with the Silurian hypothesis. They are not far away. They are not dead. They are right here. They are watching us. And they have been watching us since we climbed out of the trees. If a previous technological civilization originated on Earth, or if Earth is part of a larger galactic estate, they wouldn't just abandon it. You don't abandon a garden, you monitor it. But you don't monitor it by landing a spaceship on the White House lawn. That disturbs the experiment. You monitor it with sentinels, automated, invisible, and patient. To find them, we have to look at the architecture of our own solar system. We are taught that the solar system is a chaotic clockwork of gravity and rocks. But when you look closely, it looks suspiciously. Safe, too safe. Consider Jupiter. It is a gas giant with massive gravity. It acts as a vacuum cleaner for the solar system. It pulls in asteroids and comets that would otherwise smash into the inner planets. Without Jupiter, Earth would be bombarded by extinction, level events every few million years. Life would never have the stability to evolve into intelligence. Is Jupiter just a lucky break? Or is it a shield? Some astronomers have argued that our solar system is unusually orderly compared to the chaotic exoplanetary systems we are discovering elsewhere. And then, look at the Moon. It is anomalously large for a planet of our size. It stabilizes Earth's axial tilt, giving us predictable seasons. Without the Moon, Earth would wobble wildly, causing climate chaos that would make agriculture impossible. And there is the impossible coincidence: the Moon is exactly 400 times smaller than the Sun, and exactly 400 times closer to Earth. This means that during an eclipse, they overlap perfectly. Mathematics says this is a coincidence, but to an engineer, it looks like calibration. If the Earth is a cradle for life, the solar system looks like a crib designed to protect it. But who built the crib? And are there cameras in the walls? We need to talk about orbital objects. Earth has more than one moon. We have quasi-satellites. These are small asteroids that are locked in a gravitational dance with Earth. They don't orbit us directly, but they follow us around the Sun, tracing complex corkscrew paths. One of them is named Kamo'olawa. It is a rock about the size of a Ferris wheel. It is difficult to see because it stays in the shadows, but its orbit is incredibly stable. It has been hovering near Earth for centuries, and it will stay there for centuries more. If you wanted to park a surveillance probe to monitor Earth, you wouldn't put it in a low orbit where it would drag and burn up. You wouldn't put it on the Moon where it might be spotted. You would put it on a quasi-satellite. You would hollow out a rock like Kamo'olawa, fill it with sensors, and let it drift. It effectively becomes a stealth blind. We have never sent a probe to inspect these objects. We assume they are just rocks. But in the logic of the Silurian hypothesis, these are the perfect locations for the watchers. And sometimes, the watchers might pass through. In 2017, our telescopes detected an object that broke all the rules: Oumuamua. It was the first interstellar object ever detected passing through our solar system. But it didn't behave like a comet. It didn't have a tail. It didn't outgas. It was shaped like a cigar, or a flat disk, a shape that is extremely rare in nature because tumbling rocks usually break apart into spheres. But the strangest thing was its movement. As it passed the Sun and began to leave the solar system, it accelerated. Gravity slows things down as they move away. Oumuamua sped up. Mainstream science scrambled for an explanation. They said maybe it was releasing hydrogen gas that was invisible to our sensors, acting like a rocket thruster. But Professor Avi Loeb, the chair of astronomy at Harvard University, dared to ask the forbidden question: what if it was a light sail? What if it was a piece of defunct technology tumbling through the stars that woke up when it got close to the Sun? Was Oumuamua a visitor? Or was it a garbage truck collecting data? It scanned the inner solar system, swept past Earth, and then engaged its drive to report back to somewhere. If the Earth is a protected zone, a nature preserve, then there must be rules. This leads us to the zoo hypothesis. This theory states that there are advanced civilizations out there, but they have agreed to a prime directive: do not interfere with developing species, let them evolve, let them struggle. Why? Because interference destroys potential. If you give a caveman a nuclear reactor, he doesn't learn physics, he just learns how to blow himself up. To truly develop a peer civilization, you have to let them survive the great filter on their own. But this implies that someone is enforcing the quarantine. Someone is making sure we don't get out before we are ready. And someone is making sure nothing else gets in to hurt us. We have detected intense gamma ray bursts in the universe. We have seen galaxies that look like they are dying. But our corner of the galaxy is quiet, suspiciously quiet. Is it a quiet neighborhood? Or is the noise being dampened? There is a concept called the Bracewell probe. Proposed by physicist Ronald Bracewell in 1960, it suggests that an advanced civilization wouldn't send biological astronauts to explore the universe. They would send autonomous AI probes. These probes would travel to a star system, park themselves in a stable orbit, and go to sleep. They would listen. When they detect radio waves, the sign of a technological civilization, they would wake up. They would monitor the new species. They might even try to communicate. Or they might be programmed to contain the threat. Have we already triggered a Bracewell probe? In 1927 and again in 1928, two radio researchers detected long-delayed echoes. They sent a radio signal into space and it bounced back seconds later. Radio waves travel at the speed of light. To bounce back after seconds, they would have to hit something huge nearby. But there was nothing there. Some theorists suggest that a Bracewell probe intercepted the signal, recorded it, and transmitted it back to Earth as a way of saying, "I hear you." And then there's the famous WOW signal of 1977. A burst of radio energy, 30 times stronger than the background noise, on a frequency that is forbidden for human use. It lasted 72 seconds. It came from the Sagittarius constellation. It looked exactly like an artificial transmission. We looked back at that spot again and again. Silence. Was it a message, or was it a scan? Did a sentinel sweep its beam across Earth? Did he upload our data and then shut down? The scary part of the Silurian Hypothesis is that it suggests we are not the masters of our destiny. We are the subjects of an evaluation. The ancients, whether they are our ancestors who fled to the stars or an alien collective, are waiting for us to reach a specific milestone. What is the milestone? Is it world peace? Is it artificial general intelligence? Is it warp drive? Or is it something more dangerous? Maybe the test is, can they survive their own technology? We are currently building AI. We are editing genomes. We are building hypersonic missiles. We are shaking the bars of the cage. If the Sentinels are real, they are watching our nuclear tests with great interest. They are tracking our Mars rovers. They are listening to our internet traffic. They are analyzing our aggression, our art, yet our capacity for empathy and our capacity for genocide. And eventually, they will make a decision. There are only two outcomes for a species in the cosmic zoo. Outcome 1. We prove we are responsible. We prove we can steward a planet without killing it. We prove we can wield the power of a star without burning the house down. In that case, the quarantine is lifted. The first contact happens. We are welcomed into the family. The history of the Earth is revealed to us, and we take our place among the ancients. Outcome 2. We fail. We prove we are a cancer. We consume everything. We destroy the biosphere. We threaten the stability of the solar system. In that case, the Sentinels have a different protocol. It is called sterilization. It has happened before. Remember the dinosaur extinction? The asteroid that hit the Yucatan Peninsula was 6 miles wide. It hit at the perfect angle to cause maximum damage. It hit a sulfur-rich deposit to create maximum climate cooling. It was a kill shot. Was it a stray rock? Or was it a reset button? Did the dinosaurs evolve into something the watchers didn't like? Or was the biosphere simply being cleared for the next experiment, us? We are walking a tightrope. We are hunting for the artifacts of the past, not realizing that we are being hunted by the guardians of the future. The clues are there. The moon is watching. The asteroids are listening. The DNA inside us is recording. We are nearing the end of the cycle. The symptoms are all around us. The climate is shifting. The magnetic poles are drifting. The tension is rising. The test is almost over. Pencils down. In the final segment of this saga, we will bring it all together. We will confront the ultimate question. If we are in a cycle, how do we break it? How do we avoid becoming just another layer of black shale in the geological record? How do we survive the great filter? The Sentinels are waiting for our answer, and we had better get it right, because this time, there might not be a reset. This time, it might be a shutdown. Subscribe. The judgment is coming. We have reached the end of the excavation. We have dug through the crushed strata of the deep earth. We have drilled into the frozen time capsules of Antarctica. We have scanned the silent dust-covered ruins of the moon. And we have dared to look into the mirror of our own genetic code. The scattered pieces of the puzzle have finally been assembled. And the image they form is not what we wanted to see. It is not a straight line of progress leading inevitably from the swamp to the stars. It is a circle. It is a wheel that has been turning, grinding, and crushing for 4.5 billion years. The Silurian Hypothesis began as a thought experiment. It started as a simple question, could we find them? But it has ended as a terrifying realization, we are becoming them. The evidence suggests that civilizations are not permanent fixtures of a planet. They are seasonal events. Like a bloom of algae in the ocean or a forest fire in the summer, technological societies rise up, burn brightly, consume the available energy, and then collapse under the weight of their own waste. The Earth then triggers its immune system, the climate shifts, the ice comes, the oceans scour the land, and the slate is wiped clean, ready for the next attempt. We look at the dinosaurs and we see failures because they went extinct. We mock their small brains, but the dinosaurs reigned for 160 million years. They lived in harmony with the biosphere. They didn't burn the house down. We have been industrialized for barely 200 years. In the grand timeline of Earth, we are not even a paragraph yet. We are a footnote. We are a glitch in the carbon cycle. But there is something different about us. There is a spark in this cycle that perhaps did not exist in the ones before. We are the first species in the history of this planet, as far as we know, to discover the Silurian Hypothesis. We are the first to look at the strata of the past and recognize the pattern of our own destruction. The previous civilizations, if they existed, were likely blindsided. They probably didn't have the geological perspective we have. They didn't know that the carbon they were burning was poisoning the future. They didn't know that their wars would leave scars that would fester for eons. They built their towers of Babel, thinking they would touch heaven, never realizing the foundation was turning to sand. But we do. We have the map. We have the black box data from the crashes that happened before us. We can see the skid marks on the road of history, and this gives us a terrifying burden. But it also gives us a choice that no other species has ever had. We are standing at the Great Filter. This is the concept that explains the silence of the universe. It suggests that there is a barrier, a hurdle so high and so difficult that almost no civilization makes it across. Most trip and fall. Most burnout. We used to think the Great Filter was behind us. We thought the hard part was evolving from single cells to multicellular life. But the Silurian Hypothesis suggests the Great Filter is right in front of us. The filter is this. Can a species acquire the power of a god without destroying the garden? Can you split the atom without burning the atmosphere? Can you change the climate without freezing the planet? Can you create artificial intelligence without being replaced by it? We are currently testing every single one of those tripwires. If we look at the evidence, we found the sudden spikes in temperature, like the Paleocene, Eocene thermal maximum, the layers of radioactive dust, the sudden disappearances of biological diversity. It looks like a crime scene. We are currently enacting that crime. We are extracting the carbon that was buried by the last cycle and pumping it back into the sky. We are creating new isotopes. We are creating new synthetic materials that the Earth cannot digest. We are building the next layer of black shale. If a future geologist, 50 million years from now, digs up the layer representing the 21st century, they will see a thin, dark band of rock. It will contain high levels of lead, rare earth metals, and a distinct layer of fossilized plastic. They will look at it and say, here is another one. Here is another civilization that grew too fast, consumed too much, and died too young. This is the nightmare scenario. This is the wheel turning again. But we have the power to break the wheel. What does breaking the wheel look like? It requires a fundamental shift in how we view our place in the universe. We must stop acting like parasites and start acting like symbiotic partners. It means transitioning from a Type 0 civilization, one that burns dead plants and fights over land, to a Type 1 civilization, one that masters the energy of its planet without destroying it. It means building a circular economy where waste does not exist, where every atom is recycled, just like the Earth recycles its crust. It means becoming the gardeners instead of the locusts. The artifacts we found, the wolf's egg iron, the moon dust, the genetic anomalies, the whispering crystals in the caves, they are not just curiosities to be put in a museum. They are warnings. They are the ghosts of our older brothers and sisters shouting to us from across the abyss of time. They are saying we missed the turn. We fell asleep at the wheel. Don't make the same mistake. The sentinels in the sky, if they are there, are not our enemies. They are the proctors of the test. They are waiting to see if we have the wisdom to match our intelligence. Intelligence is knowing how to build a nuclear bomb. Wisdom is knowing not to use it. Intelligence is terraforming a planet. Wisdom is keeping your own planet habitable. Intelligence is conquering death. Wisdom is accepting that we are part of something larger than ourselves. The silence of the universe is not an empty silence. It is a pregnant silence. It is the silence of a courtroom waiting for the verdict. We are on trial. The earth is the judge. The laws of physics are the jury. And the evidence is being gathered every single day. We are standing at the most critical juncture in the history of life on Earth. The next 100 years will decide the next 100 million years. This is not hyperbole. This is the timeline. If we survive this century, if we survive the climate crisis, the transition to artificial general intelligence, and the geopolitical nuclear standoff, we will have graduated. We will have passed the filter. We will move out into the stars, not as refugees fleeing a dying world, but as ambassadors of a living one. We will join the community of ancients. We will add our voice to the choir. But if we fail, the earth will not mourn us. The earth is patient. It has seen thousands of species rise and fall. It has recovered from asteroid strikes that boiled the oceans. It has recovered from volcanic winters that lasted for millennia. It will recover from us. It will simply shrug, bury our skyscrapers in sand, melt our plastic into the rocks, and wait. It will wait for the rats, or the crows, or the octopuses to evolve a neocortex, and it will give them a shot at the title. And maybe, in 50 million years, they will dig up a rusty iPhone, and they will wonder who we were and why we failed. The Silurian Hypothesis is a mirror. When you stare into it, you don't just see the past, you see the future. You see two paths diverging in the yellow wood of time. One path leads to the stars. It leads to immortality. It leads to the preservation of consciousness. The other path leads to the sediment. It leads to the darkness. It leads to the silence. The scary part is that we might be alone in the universe. The scary part is that we might be next on the chopping block. We are the current custodians of the flame of consciousness. It is a flame that has been lit and extinguished many times before on this windy rock. It is a fragile thing, flickering in the cosmic dark. Our job, our only job, is to cup our hands around it and keep it burning long enough to pass it on. We are the bridge between the dirt and the divine. We cannot let the bridge collapse. Look at your hand. Look at the technology you are using to watch this. You are part of the machine. You are part of the technosphere. But you are also part of the solution. You are the conscious observer. You are the universe waking up to understand itself. Curiosity is the antidote to extinction. Asking the question is the first step to solving the problem. The moment we stop asking what happened before is the moment we ensure it happens again. We have explored the deep time of Earth. We have walked the ruins of the possible past. We have stared into the abyss of the great unconformity. Now it is time to build the impossible future. The story of Earth is a book with many chapters that have been ripped out and burned. We cannot read those lost pages. We can only guess at the tragedies and triumphs written on them. But we are holding the pen right now. We are writing the current chapter. And for the first time in history, we have the choice to determine whether this chapter ends with a period or a comma. Does the story end here, or does it continue? This investigation does not end with this video. This is merely the opening statement. We are dedicated to asking the questions that mainstream science is afraid to touch. We dig where others just walk. We look at the shadows that others ignore. We are building a community of minds that refuses to accept the official narrative of we are the first. If you feel the weight of deep time, if you suspect that the history of our world is stranger and darker than we are told, If you want to join the excavation and help us piece together the lost history of our reality, then you know what to do. Make your mark. Click the subscribe button, not just to watch another video, but to join the watch, to become a sentinel. Because the night is long, the history is deep, and the silence is deafening. We have a lot of digging to do. I'll see you in the next layer. See.